Good evening. Thank you for joining us at New Day Fellowship Church, growing church, new vision for a multicultural generation. Well, thank you for joining us this evening, and not only that, but welcome to online viewers. If you're on Facebook, push like, comment, and share. If you're on YouTube, push like, comment, and subscribe. And on our website at a newdayfellowshipchurch.org. You can always just come and join us here. We thank you for joining us this evening. Why? Because we have a special guest here, and this gentleman that I've been knowing for quite a while. And what I mean by that is a few years, but the idea is once I meet a person, then they come acquainted with our relationship. But I want to introduce you to Dr. Matt Smith, the superintendent of Belton Independent School District. And so we're going to get to know who this gentleman is. We understand that he is a superintendent that has two high schools, and so there's ample of people, three high schools. I'm sorry, I said two, three, my bad. But the idea is we're going to get to know who Matt Smith is, and I'm going to ask him some questions. He's going to answer them, and then he may just want to throw in some extra things. So I want you to just give a warm welcome to Dr. Matt Smith from Belton Independent School District.
Thank you, Pastor. I'm honored to be here today, appreciative of your support and your friendship as we've gotten to know each other over the past couple of years, and I'm excited to be here and talk a little bit about Matt Smith as a person and also some of the good work in Belton ISD that's going on.
All right, so who is Matt Smith?
Yes, it's a wonderful question, and sometimes I don't say it too loud in the state of Texas because I'm actually a native New Yorker. And so I grew up in a little town in upstate New York, and when I tell people New York, they think of the city. But honestly, I grew up in a little small farming community. I had 77 students in my graduating class, and my little town had one blinking stoplight. So that tells you a little bit about the size. It was a farm community, but it was, more importantly to me, a wonderful place to grow up because it represented community to me. There were people that cared about their neighbors that might have lived miles away, but we were all neighbors to each other, and we cared for each other and looked out for each other along the way. I had two amazing parents, my father, Emmitt Smith, and I want to be clear, not the Emmitt Smith from the Dallas Cowboys. He will tell you he's the original Emmitt Smith, though, but Emmitt Smith and my mom, Judy Smith, or Judith. And my dad was stationed in the Army at West Point. He had done a tour in Vietnam, and he was stationed at West Point after his tour in Vietnam. And he and my mother had met right before that tour. My mom grew up in upstate New York, and they'd met, and they ended up getting married and settling in upstate New York. And so that led them to the town that my mom grew up in. And my sister and I were privileged to grow up there as well. A little bit about our faith and our family life along the way. I attended a little tiny Baptist church, and it was interesting. I went back to that church this last year for a funeral, and it seemed so much bigger as a kid. But you go back, and it was a small church, and the creaky pews and everything. And so I sat next to my parents and in between my parents and my grandmother often, and got the elbows to stay awake along the way as a kid. But again, referring back to that experience as a student and a kid growing up, that church community was very important for me as well. My youth group was a part of my school. My uncle, who directed the choir and sang in the choir at different times, was my principal at my high school. My mom taught in my school and was actively involved in the church, and my father was a deacon in the church. Mm-hmm. And so that the intertwined community and our faith community and our school community was all one together. And for me, that made me value the importance, one, of public education, but two, the sense of wrapping our arms around people and supporting them in the toughest times. And I'm honored to say that I had a wonderful family that did that and exemplified that. And our Sunday dinners after church were often with guests in our house or out to eat with people, and it was about bringing people in and supporting them as community members. And that meant a lot to me, and that still is something that I believe as an adult, as a professional, I strive for in the feeling that we create in our school district. We want that community feel that everybody knows. We know the students by name and face and need, and we're there supporting them and doing everything we can together to ensure their success. Along the way, I went to, after graduating from high school, I went to a college, a little college in Virginia Beach, Virginia, called Virginia Wesleyan College, and finished my degree there as an English major. And after I graduated, I went back and student taught that fall, and I was honored to get a job mid-year for a wonderful lady that was retiring. And so in January, I started my teaching career after that in a little rural community in Cortland, Virginia. And so it was just to the west of Suffolk, Virginia. And it's about a 60-mile drive each way for me to that school district. And for some reason, to my father's dismay, at the end of that school year, I decided that I wanted to try the West Coast out and move all the way across the coast, across the United States to California. My sister and brother-in-law had been living there, and I had it in my head that I wanted to do that. And I remember the phone conversation with my father very clearly saying, "You're quitting your job without a job and moving across country. What is wrong with you, son?" And it turns out that I did that to meet my wife. And so I ended up getting a job teaching in Thousand Oaks, California at Thousand Oaks High School. And it just turns out that my wife was teaching there as well. And so...
And it's just as well as Emmitt Smith when he did practicing, the original other Emmitt Smith, Dallas Cowboys. I'm sorry.
That's right. No, and it's funny that getting there, was one of those things that I as a leader right now, and I mentioned this to you earlier, as a leader right now, one of the things I have to remind myself often of is that it's God's plan, not my plan.
Right.
And I believe that was God's hand leading me to California to meet my wife. And we had a couple of wonderful years in California, and we decided both as teachers we couldn't afford to live in California and teach, and we moved to Phoenix, Arizona. Okay. A lot of that was really just about being able to buy a house and raise a family and start to raise a family. From there, I've had two wonderful daughters. I have an older daughter, Haley, who's 20 years old. And Haley has some pretty significant special needs. And I'll talk a little bit about Haley in just a minute. And then my younger daughter, Summer, is a senior at Lake Belton High School. I'm super proud of her. And that parenting aspect, those years have gone fast in the blink of an eye. When you look back on it and you remember when you're holding them and rocking them at 1 year old, and then all of a sudden they're graduating from high school. So it's been a blessing. A long story short, to end up in Texas, my wife and I mentioned my oldest daughter, Haley, with some significant special needs. She was about in first grade, and I was a high school principal in the Phoenix area at this time, Phoenix, Arizona. And we realized that the system, my daughter was going to struggle in the school system that she was in. And we were trying to figure out how to manage that and what to do about it. Here I am as an educator, and I didn't know exactly what to do. And faith has played an important part of my life, and we prayed about it a lot. And I was doing some research one time, and I saw a job description, and it talked about an autism specialist. And in that job description, it was the partnership between the school district and the parent. And this position's job was to facilitate that relationship to ensure we were meeting the needs of students. Well, that position was posted for Hillsboro High School in Hillsboro, Oregon. It wasn't anywhere near Phoenix, Arizona. And I showed it to Heather and my wife, and I said, this is what we're missing. And again, learning to trust God and not my plans all the time. It just turns out that the principal position at Hillsboro High School was posted later that spring. And so I saw that. I talked to Heather about it. We prayed about it. I applied for that position, and I got that position. And it was really about a step forward in faith about trying to do what was right for my family, and as a young parent trying to understand what it was going to be like raising a daughter with significant special needs. And so we moved to Hillsboro, Oregon, didn't have any family there. Once again, my father was living right down the road from us in Phoenix, Arizona, and thought I was crazy on that one. But it turns out that was a wonderful experience for us for those We were there for 5 years. And we ended up in Central Texas because we got to a point with my oldest that we wanted to be around family again. And my in-laws had lived in Central Texas. And so we ended up on a journey. I ended up on a journey, and then along with my wife along the way, across the country in various states. And I really believe wholeheartedly that in two things. One, it was God's hand leading us in various locations. But two, it was all about family for us and the decisions that we made.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions. I'm going to ask you one question first and the second question. In the little small church, as you say, in the Baptist church in the upper New York, what really stood out with you at that church that you can always remember out of a shadow of a doubt, just off a whim of an idea?
Yeah, I had as I mentioned, I had a wonderful model, I believe, of seeing my parents involved in a church community. And it doesn't mean just attending church on Sunday, but it means being involved in a community. And I'll share an example. We lived maybe a quarter of a mile from the church, actually, and had a wonderful big green yard. And in that yard, we would, like as kids, we'd be able to do a whole lot of things out there. And I can vividly remember the pastor of our church, his name was James Utley, and I remember pastor coming down and playing softball with us as kids in that yard. And that type of interaction in that community and that type of church interaction, you know, we had the church basement, just like everybody pictures church basements, where we had all sorts of potluck dinners after church services, or sometimes for weddings and celebrations, or sometimes for funerals. But it was about community coming together, and at the heart of that was the church. And so I remember those things very, very vividly. I remember, you know, our Christmas Eve service is something that I don't know if I'll ever forget, because the way that moved me as a young person, and we had a candlelight service, and I remember the entire community coming and it being packed, and honestly probably violated many fire codes along the way. But it was such a moving experience for us to see this community come together and celebrate the birth of Jesus. And so those are things that stand out to me. You know, it's in my mind, it's all about community and supporting each other. It's a constant quest for knowing and understanding God's will and being able to listen to God's will. And I believe that I believe wholeheartedly that experience growing up definitely shaped my life.
Wow, that's deep right there. I mean, you just knew it off the whim of your. I mean, it's already there. It's impact. Second question is that how did you know that you wanted to be an educator?
You know, originally I knew I loved books, and I knew I loved writing, and that was something I did pretty well at, and it was a passion of mine. And so I went into college at Virginia Wesleyan thinking I was going to be an English major and an educator. I had that in my mind to start. And I remember conversations with a family member saying, "Are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure you don't want to go into the business world?" And I did. I wanted to be an educator the entire time. And I think a lot of that was for a love of books and literature that I'd found. I had a few teachers, and it was interesting. I mentioned I went to a funeral this summer back in New York. I was able to see some of those teachers at that funeral that I had as a kid that greatly influenced my life, and specifically life as an English teacher. And I think they had a profound influence on me in that. But I want to share one example of after I became an educator, and I share often about, I think this is when I truly became an educator or still strive to be an educator. As I was teaching in Phoenix, Arizona, I was an English teacher because I loved books and I loved writing. But I had a student, and her name was Veronica Ortiz, and I remember Veronica very vividly. She was a sophomore, and I was teaching Veronica. And Veronica and I came from very different backgrounds. And Veronica had some challenges that she was going through in her home life. And here I was trying to teach her these great books that I had in my mind, because that was the important piece. It was about the content. Well, Veronica schooled me during that relationship that year and made me realize that teaching is far more about teaching kids, not the content. It's about connecting with the student so that they see value in content, not just telling them that there's value in content. And that year, she's the student. Whenever you ask an educator, hey, do you have a student that influenced your life as an educator? She's mine. And I remember very vividly realizing that I had to do my craft as a teacher differently if I was really going to be about each and every student. And so that phrase that I just used, each and every student, is something that we use in Belton ISD all the time, because it's sitting in a class is far more important to connect with that student and help them access learning rather than just tell them what they're supposed to be learning. Real fast story on Veronica. She reached out to me a year ago.
Wow.
And Veronica is currently a teacher in the Seattle area now and expecting her first child. And so we're super excited about that.
That is awesome. Okay,
Yes.
third question. Your wife.
Yes.
How did you actually meet her? Were y'all like at a supermarket, or were you at the church, or
We were
or
sitting.
at a football game?
No, sir. We were sitting in the teacher's room at the school, and she was doing a long-term substitute job at Thousand Oaks High School, and I was teaching English at Thousand Oaks High School, and I met her, and she had friends there. She grew up in that area. She knew more people than I did, and it was a large high school. And so I met her for the first time there, and over the course of a couple of years, we became good friends. And then all of a sudden we thought, you know what, we should probably start dating. And how about that? Ended up getting married just a couple of years later. She grew up in a Nazarene church, a very strong family as well. And we, through our journey together as a married couple, we've shared that we've had challenges along the way with being parents to a daughter with significant special needs. And I believe her faith and my faith together that strong family faith has helped us through all of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's just how fate is. We thinking that we're gonna see this person that way or this gonna happen, but God has a special plan for us.
Yes.
We always use a phrase here is this: if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And he just
That's a good one.
the opposite,
Yes.
than what we even encounter and how we meet people. And when we meet people, it's not just just a happenstance, but a coincidence. It's destined for that to happen,
Yes.
to build a better relationship. And so you all got married after that. So
Yes,
praise God. That's
Yes, sir.
awesome. Another question is that you was athletic director at one time.
Yes, sir.
What school was this?
This was at Agua Fria High School, just outside of Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
Yes.
And was it challenging and
You know-
egos from coaches and everything?
That was a great experience, and it's a different model than is often used in Texas. In Texas, often you will have a head football coach that is the athletic coordinator of a school and runs the athletic programs. In Arizona, you see more often it is an administrative position. And so I was a young former coach. I coached basketball and track, and was fortunate enough to be given the athletic director position for my school. And yeah, there was a lot of you work with a lot of personalities that are strong personalities in that role. But one of the things that I've always prided myself on, and I believe those coaches and those teachers did a really good job of this as well, is for us it wasn't about the ego as much as it was about the opportunity for students. And I developed one of our coaches, a very strong-willed personality. And yeah, there were some challenges at first and all of that, but when we got to a common understanding of we were both in it for the same reason, I can still keep in touch with that person today. And so that was a great experience. I loved, growing up in New York, going to a small school. I had the opportunity to play many sports and be involved in all sorts of things. And those experiences, gave me a foundation for realizing how important it was to have kids connected to a team and an adult that cared about them and wanted the best for them. And as an athletic director, with the support of those amazing coaches, we did some good work during that time.
How do you deal with the challenges of being an educator, going back to school, being married, and with child or
Yes.
children? How did you deal with that?
I did a lot of work at 11 o'clock at night is what happened for quite a while. I found that early in my career I had a hard time with balance, and that was one of the things that I had to work through, and I wished I'd been better at it to start with. But it got to a point where I finally said, and it was around the time I was a high school principal and pursuing a doctorate degree and things like that, that I finally said, okay, I can come home from work and I've got to shut things off for a little while and have family time. And if I'm doing work at home, it needs to be after bedtime from other people. And so that was the sacrifice that was made there. I think it's important to note also that there was a lot of support and sacrifice from my wife and other family members, that I didn't get there and work on those advanced degrees on my own. And I fully know that I wouldn't have gotten those experiences, wouldn't have completed those experiences without them.
Wow. Now, another question I'd like to ask you is that dealing with that, okay, you have accepted Christ as your personal Savior, you have the Lord on your side and knowing that, but you're on His side and all the above things. Did you all just have to come and just into agreement that this is what we need to do to advance where we need to go and do what God asks us to do and not worry about what other people would say?
I will tell you one of the most important growing experiences I think I had as a dad and as a man, and through this whole process, was when I was going through a doctorate degree. And I share this with you because it was a challenging experience. I was a young administrator who was, my wife and I were on the same page. Let's pursue this. This is great. And got to about age 3 or 4 of my oldest and found out she was really having significant delays in her development. And that was in the middle of some of my studies at Arizona State. And so trying to manage that and trying to figure out what was best for myself and my family, that was a struggle for a while. And it did take a lot of prayer, and it did take a lot of grace from my wife and family members too. But ultimately what ended up happening is I ended up having to finish a doctorate degree at Concordia University, not at Arizona State. We had to take a different course. And that, for me, again, was God's hand saying, okay, hold on a second. My priorities might be a little bit different than your priorities right now. And so, yes, working with my wife, working with our extended family to be able to accomplish those things was important, but also recognizing that sometimes I've got to be still and let God lead and not just try to follow my own plan. That was one of those occasions along the way. There were a lot of twists and turns that I would never have planned, but ultimately I believe that was God's way of reminding me who's in charge of my life and also reminding me the faith that I need to have in Him.
Right. I know the scripture in Proverbs chapter 3, and it talks about leaning not on thy own understanding.
Yes, sir.
And, we as humans do that all the time, where we think we do this and do that, and here's a game plan for us, and then God says, nope, let's scratch that.
Yes.
Let's do this. And we found out His plan much better than what we planned.
That's
and
right.
we're like, well, I didn't see it that way. And God said, you're not supposed to,
Yes.
That's why I'm God and you're not.
Yes.
So I get excited then, and then, it says, acknowledge Him in all thy ways.
Yes.
And you all have done that. You might not have it done it, the way that you thought it was being done, but it's there,
Yes.
and it happened, and that's why you are where you are today. Now let's fast forward. First superintendent job.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about that.
I had the wonderful opportunity to join Belton ISD just in the spring of 2020. And I will tell you that when I was interviewing our board of trustees as much as they were interviewing me. I believe wholeheartedly in fit for taking a job like that, and you have to feel good. I had to feel good as much as the board had to feel good about it. And I found a group of 7 amazing community leaders that were elected to that board, and we felt a good connection right off the bat. And that led me to Belton ISD. And I'd done my homework on the school district, and I'd actually come up here and spent some time up here over a weekend and asked people about the school district and the strengths of the school district and what made them proud to send their students to Belton ISD, and that was before anybody knew I had applied for the job. And so I had the privilege of joining this amazing team in the spring of 2020, but then it was 10 days in, and this thing called COVID happened, and we closed for spring break and didn't open the rest of that year, or the rest of that school year. And again, that was another experience along the way, and now, it's another reminder for me that my plans aren't always God's plans, and that I need to be ready to submit myself to God's plans, and things go so much better then. But I came in with all these plans on what I was going to do to engage a community and how I was going to be involved, and God had a different plan that He was enacting here, and we had to pivot and do things differently. And there were some wonderful learning experiences and also wonderful connections that were made through that process as well. I acknowledge the fact that time during history in our nation and in our local community was a painful time for a lot of people, and there was also in my experience some times of profound opportunity to make connections that we never would have thought we could make. And so my entry plan into the school district looked a whole lot different than holding community meetings face to face and talking to people, but it was more of an opportunity to connect with people over the similar challenges that we were all facing. And I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful for this community. I don't know of a community stronger than this Central Texas area, the Belton Temple area, that got through all of that as well as this community did. I'm very grateful for that.
I know when COVID did come in full force, it was like a ghost town. And nobody knew nothing. Nobody knew what was taking place. Nobody knew who had what, and it was bizarre. I mean, it was just unusual.
It was odd for me to be in my office in that spring and nobody else was in the office, and I thought, oh, this doesn't feel like a superintendent job right now. What's happening here? But we learned a lot of lessons along the way, and we also were reminded, and I hope everyone was reminded, of the power of great schooling for students. And the important role that public schools play throughout our nation, and the ability for communities to connect and to pull people in and to wrap their arms around people when we're separated like that. It's a lot harder, and I think I felt it, and I believe a lot of other people felt that power during that time.
I know we depend on AI at times, but this was more of a let's think this thing out. AI didn't have nothing to do with this. AI didn't have no clue. But for people coming together, and the Bible talked about how unity prevails, and how we came together as a unit, not individuals, and thought these things over and had different powwows and had different synopses and ideas, but we got through it, and we found out what was better for us. So I really do appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I mean,
I agree.
It's just amazing.
Yes.
How we can put everything aside and just say, let's deal with this to work with it.
The power of people putting ego aside, agendas aside, and working together for a common good, I think, was on full display during that time.
Yes.
I agree with you.
And I like you did how you came to Belton. Of course, I was alumni from Belton, and my sisters, they all were alumni from Belton. And back in those days, you didn't tell your parents where you went to go to school. Yeah. You just went to the nearest school, and you just dealt with it.
Yep.
And so now these days, they find out the person's good in sport or whatever, and they move them across town, or across state, or whatever, so they can get a better education. But the idea is, like saying, the hands that were dealt to us, we just dealt with it.
That's right.
I don't have no problem, graduating from Belton. And I talked to one individual, won't call the name out, and I told my graduation from Belton, and the person said, "Oh, I feel so sorry for us." I said, "Then I'm fine. It didn't bother me none. I did what was best, because I can tell mom and daddy, no, I want to go to this school. No, just had fun."
Yeah. I think that's an important point to make too. One of the things that we're working on as a school district is I want to be that school district that everybody's proud of sending their student to.
Right.
And we talk a lot about exceptional learning, and what we mean by that is from the moment that student walks in the door to the time they leave that door, I want them to go home excited to tell their family about what happened in school that day in a positive way. And that table talk conversation at night, I want it to be about how they were inspired to do something new and exciting and pursue their dreams and give back to their community. And I think that that's what we're striving for. And we know that we have a long way to go to say we're doing that for each and every student. But I can promise you we're on that quest.
Yes, we have a learning academy here.
Yes.
And we get numerous of phone calls coming back and they said, my child is singing a song. What song is this? And so they tell the impact
Yes.
that you have instilled in that individual. Now, the one thing that I really just can't grasp, I just don't understand this, is people that are instilling information to your children, grooming your children,
Yeah.
getting your children to where they are today, they're the most least paid people. And I don't understand that. I just
we're
can't comprehend.
we're struggling to understand that too. I think I mentioned those teachers that I can point to that made an impact on my life, and coaches that I know that made an impact on my life. And I think pretty much everybody I knows has those stories.
Yeah.
They know that a teacher has the ability to change a life of a student, change a trajectory. And we still see them underpaid and undervalued in our communities. And I think that's a shame that the work that they do, I believe, is God's work, because I believe they have the ability to shape students' futures and to empower them to do something pretty special. And we're working constantly on advocating for adequate funding and pay for our teachers, because we know how much that matters. And it's important also to note that it's not just the teachers. We have bus drivers that impact our students' lives every day. We talk about that being the first class in the morning. When a student gets on that bus in the morning, we want them to feel special. We want them to feel valued and supported and challenged to grow, but that they're loved and cared for in our system too. And so from the bus drivers to our cafeteria workers to our custodial staff to our teachers, it takes everybody to do that. Right. And we're constantly working to advocate for more for them.
Right. I recall back in the day, and this is way back in the day, is that Texas wanted to know if they wanted to do a lottery. Mm-hmm. And so had this one governor, the person said it'll be for the teachers and their pay raises. And so Texas passed that back in the day, and it never went there.
Yeah.
It diverted. As soon as passed, so I just, so okay. So
it's a challenge. I realize I own a home here. I realize things like taxes are a challenging topic for a lot of people. I understand that. I pay my taxes too. And I do know that we have to figure out a better system for funding for public schools, because I do believe that they're a difference maker in kids' lives.
Yes,
and if we really believe that, and people really acknowledge that, then it's time to do something different with funding.
Yes, I remember some of my school teachers back in the day. I can still remember their name. I can still remember quite a few of my Sunday school teachers, and back in the day, and how they instilled things inside of me. And I said, I didn't get this from the world. I got this from these people, and it has impacted my life and still impacting my life. And some of those names I can call out right now, but I won't, because some a person may say, you didn't call my mom name out, so I just leave it alone. But the idea, I can still remember it, and I'm of age now, but I can still remember what they said to me and how they impacted my life. And it's so it's very important that we speak the right thing, say the right thing, and do the right thing in front of the children, because they are watching.
Yes, sir.
And not only that, they're occurred to it's time for them to exit out of this earth. So
That's
I really
right.
do appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Anything else you want to talk about?
I want to say one thing just about our school district and the work, if that's okay.
Sure.
As you mentioned, being proud to graduate from Belton ISD, we're proud of the work that's going on in our school district, and I want to publicly thank our educators, our administrators, all of our support staff. We have nearly 14,000 students in Belton ISD now, and we're going to be opening up our 20th school in January. Wow. James Burrell Elementary School.
Okay. I remember Mr. Burrell.
Yes, a lot of people remember Mr. Burrell. And we're excited to open that building, and his impact on our system I heard stories about Mr. Burrell, and I think the most important thing about it was it's hard to find a man that you can hear all positive stories about, but that was James Burrell.
Yes, yes.
And over 50 years of dedicated professional experience to our school district, we're excited to name the school after him, to dedicate the school in his name, and to open that school for our students coming up in January. But in order to get to that point, it takes everybody. And
Yes.
the work that's happening for our teachers, the work that's happening by all of our support staff, it's all done in the name of creating something exceptional for kids, and I'm thankful for their work.
Yes, I was so excited that, the name came out
Yes, sir.
at the finalists, that Mr. Burrell. And I said, I remember Mr. Burrell, and I remember him driving that yellow bus, and, he was just real quiet and, cool. And I never had any issues with him because I stayed out of his way.
Yeah.
First thing. Second thing is that I knew mannerism because Mama would tell us, well, you better behave yourself, because if not, I get it once I get home.
Yes.
And Mama didn't play.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious. I mean, she didn't play. They would call it abusive now.
Yeah.
But it was called keep me out of jail and prison. And she did exactly that because she instilled some things. And my sisters can tell you that I would average like 3 whoopings a day at home because I was just mischief. Or they probably say BAD, bad.
Yes.
I just use nice word, mischief. But the idea, it kept me. And
Yes.
so I'm excited about that. And I
Yeah.
remember the 6th grade, they took us to Bell County Jail.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, took every child there. And I think they was instilling us not to get this direction.
Right.
And a lot of us didn't even get that direction. We said, because we saw them like animals locked up in cages. And,
Yes.
and they was grabbing us. I think they told them to do that, to scare us. We all against the wall, moving around.
Sounds like it worked.
It still scares me.
Yes.
I'm like, I'm not going that direction. But I get excited, and I remember Mr. Richard Crane over the Marching 100. And
Yes.
it was so excited that he just let us do our thing, and not only that, they had like drum majors back in the day, and we would be playing football. But when the band would march, the old high school, where they would march from the band hall to the football field, which is the soccer, I believe is there
Right.
now. It just electricity would come out, and
Yes.
and we all just got along with each other. It was just fun. It was just fun.
That tradition makes Belton ISD special and Belton High School special. That is something, and we're proud of the opening of Lake Belton High School. They're creating new traditions at that school, but I'll tell you, that strong tradition at Belton High School, and hearing those stories, you can hear them all throughout our community, and you almost always run into somebody, no matter where you are, from Belton, Texas.
Yes. Belton High School. Then after Belton High School, there was Wascall.
Yep.
Now Lake Belton. Like, wow.
Yes.
It's exploding. It's escalating, and it's more than I can even comprehend. Because you talk about that one red light. We only had, I think, 2 red lights.
Yeah.
Back in the day, and so and everybody knew everybody. You couldn't do anything wrong and get away with it, because before you get home, your parents already knew what you did.
Well, this is one of those facts that I think a lot of people are wondering about. We opened a new high school in the fall of 2020, and we already have over 2,200 students in that school.
Wow, that's awesome.
A lot of kids.
And then I'm going to spill the beans, and there's some property off of Loop 121
Yes, sir.
that was been in the making for something to happen.
Something someday.
Yes, I'm saying something. I'm going to say something,
Yeah.
So,
I'm thankful for our previous administrators and our previous boards and their leadership, because they purchased some really thoughtful property for us. And as we continue to grow, those properties are going to be very important for our future.
yeah, I remember Mr. Purtle back in the day. That's when I heard of. And then recently, Susan Kincannon.
Yes.
And not only that, Robin Battershell for a short period of time, just an interim. And
Yes.
so I worked with quite a few of those superintendents on different values or different faith-based sectors. But it was good, and so I saw the difference that was taking place.
I appreciate you acknowledging that. I think one of the things that we often don't pay enough attention to is when people dedicate their life and their time to public education. Susan, Robin, Dr. Baker before that, Joe Purtle.
I forgot about Miss Baker.
There a lot of people dedicated a lot of their life and their efforts to making this community great and making the school district something special for kids. And they did an outstanding job.
Yes, yes. So I do applaud you and what you're doing and the staff that you're doing it because, the scripture does say, it says when the oppressor's in charge, the people mourn. But when the person of God is in charge, the people are happy. And so, and I look over and see they're happy. They excited that they have a job, they have someone that cares about them, they have someone that's not just saying work, 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 but someone says, okay, let's see how we can make this thing better and do it for that. So I really applaud you and what you do.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. We care about our people, and we're going to keep doing that.
Yes, I may not say too much, but I'm watching. I'm looking over, in that area and seeing the great things going on.
Great.
So I do appreciate you coming this evening. I know you're excited to go home and spend time with your lovely wife and your children and all that. But about 50 different phone calls from here to where you're going, and then 17 different texts from here to where you're going. So I really appreciate you spending time to get this together.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I hope you know how much I've enjoyed getting to know you over the years, and we'll continue building that friendship and partnership. And our faith-based leaders across multiple churches are important to our community too. So thank you for what you do and for what your church community does.
Well, thank you, sir. Now, another thing that I want to do in the future is get yourself and Dr. Bobby out together, and we just sit and just talk.
Sounds great. We talk often, and so looking forward to it.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us at New Day Fellowship Church. We'll thank God for Dr. Matt Smith coming all the way from Belton to come over and chat with us and not only that, but to give us instilled and not only that, but get excited what God is doing at Belton ISD. And we believe that God is still in charge of this area.
Thank you, Pastor.
But thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Appreciate you guys. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye. All right.
Thank you, sir.
No, thank you, sir. I mean, because